Hello my friends, welcome to a new video. Today I am going to talk about the CAMMUS DDWB21. It is a 15 Nm max torque wheelbase which can be already counted towards the higher part of the wheelbase segment. I think the first thing I noticed when I unpacked the wheelbase is that it is very heavy and bulky, which always inspires me when it comes to the quality of the product. The design is sober, much like other wheelbases out there, with a black aluminium shell and white lettered logo on it. What is different than any other wheelbases I have reviewed so far is the integrated button box on the base. Apart from the rotary buttons, there are several push buttons and, my personal fetish, the mechanical switches. The buttons light up when pushed, which is a nice asset. Quality-wise, all of the inputs feel sturdy. Perhaps the buttons could be improved with a more mechanical feeling where you can hear the click when pushed, but in all, the quality is very satisfying. The colors of the button are a bit much for me, and I would prefer it more sober, all in the same color and more like the power button. A sticker sheet could help here to identify the buttons. Of course, this is all personal preference. It's very nice to see that CAMMUS dares to be a bit different than the competition in that aspect. Attaching the base can be done with 4 pre-drilled holes at the underside or the slots in the side of the base. Important here is that I was not able to fit it on either the Simex Pro wheelbase holder or the Track Racer one due to the position of the holes, so some drilling might be necessary to attach it properly from the bottom. The back of the wheelbase hosts a collection of 8 RG ports to attach peripherals to the base. The compatibility of the wheelbase is limited to PC in its current form. It is being sold currently for $500 or 500 euro. The steering wheel I had to test with this base is the CAMMUS GT1 steering wheel. When I took it out of the box, I must have sniffed it for 30 seconds long to inhale that sweet scent of leather. I'm really glad CAMMUS opted for the Mumu fabric and not the Alcantara. The stitching is nice and thick and seems to be very well finished. With 32 cm, this can be considered a large steering wheel compared to what is normally offered as an entry wheel. Since I love driving city cars, it is a perfect size for me. It also features carbon magnetic shifters that can be adjusted in and outwards. The shifting goes very smoothly, but does make, in my opinion, a loud noise. To be fair, it doesn't disturb me, but perhaps a little rubber stopper could be used to dampen the noise. The buttons are the same on the wheelbase and they do the job admirably and feel solid. Here too, they light up when pushed. There are no rev counters and LCD displays, which I absolutely don't miss. Again, a personal opinion. What I do miss is a D-pad to navigate menus. The quick release system feels solid and well made, just like the rest of the wheel. The current price is 200 euro and I find this for a steering wheel of this quality and finishing a real steal. First impressions are always important, but what is even more important is the driving sensation. I tested the wheelbase over several days in 2 different games.
I can really feel a lot of detail. Of course, I normally don't play these types of games that much. For me, it is more sim driving than it is sim racing. But nonetheless, I can really feel a difference. Very, very pleasant experience to drive with. With its 15 Nm, I think it can simulate most of the cars out there in terms of realism. So the immersion, I think this one is really in the sweet spot when it comes to power. Also, when you go off track, you can really also feel the difference between the sand and the grass. So I have read, because since this was my first review of a high-end base, I read some other reviews. Normally I don't do not take over what they are saying, but I did this time, and they said that it lacked perhaps a bit of detail when you go through the fast corners, but I don't really notice it. For me, yeah, I get plenty of detail. The wheel is struggling against me just enough to make it feel really a pleasant experience.
I guess, unlike other more experienced sim drivers, I cannot add my finger on what is lacking in the behavior of this wheelbase. I loved the abundance of torque I received when taking the corners and absolutely adored the tingle of my feet due to the vibration it generated in the frame. But what I perhaps like the most, and that is where I think I differ from some other reviewers, is that it didn't overwhelm me with its power, or that it tried to show off. All the force feedback I experienced felt very sensible and didn't really stand in the way of the details. I do want to point out though that a lot depends on the settings. When I tried it with the basic settings, I was really not that impressed with it. It felt really odd to drive, but with a bit of tinkering, I got it working quite nice. When it comes to software, I think CAMMUS already did a good job. In the software, there are the various settings that you can adjust. It's very easy. There is also a help function that will explain what setting does what exactly, which I found very, very handy. The list of games which are compatible is there. You can do a firmware upgrade with it. So it is quite nice already. It's not that sophisticated. It doesn't have a really sophisticated look. It feels a bit rough still, but already a very, very, very good start for this software. So as I mentioned, the out-of-the-box settings are not that great, so perhaps this is a point of improvement towards the future. When you click the game in the software, that it might adapt the settings to a more appropriate level. Of course, this depends from driver to driver, but I am sure that when settings are compared, that there can be a much more generally accepted configuration found to play the game with.
So, a completely different game, BeamNG, my favorite game, just because I like driving around a bit. You have the beautiful mountains or Italy or whatever. So more my kind of game. And how does it perform here? Well, it's much, much more relaxed, much more at ease with itself than with the ACC. You still have a lot of details here too, because the vibration of the pedals, it is still in this game. In this game too. You also have the small vibration of the steering wheel to simulate the road surface. When you go on the grass with a wheel, you will feel it. So again, really, really nice in forms of detail. And it just drives like a dream. Very light. Return to center is also instant. So this is more like the sensation that you have when you go drive normally, and this is also what I personally am looking for in driving games, is just the sensation that I have out there with my car, but to have it here in my living room. And this is a very, very nice wheel to do it with. Of course, now it is a very light steering, but from the moment that you crash, then you can feel the real power coming into play. So here, for example, on the grass, then you feel you are on the grass. Very, very nice. Very impressed. A lot of what you feel also has to do with how you configure your wheelbase in the CAMMUS software. So I already adapted it more to have a bit more heavier steering than in ACC. Because if I use the same setting in ACC as I use here, it was very light steering. So now I put it a bit heavier, which is more in line with with the real world.
BeamNG offers, of course, a lot more, and I really wanted to try out the river climbing with the DDWB21, since I enjoyed it a lot last time when I tried it. The experience was very immersive and intense, and apart from calling out for our Lord, I wasn't able to analyze the performance of the wheelbase at the moment itself. But when I reviewed the footage, it all came back to me. It was without any doubt one of the most exciting sensations I have felt in sim driving. Of course, this is due to this fantastic piece of software, but your software is only as good as your hardware is. And here, in all the testing I did, the DDWB21 really shined. I almost broke my wrists in the process, but I really was in that rock crawler for the entire ride, trying to avoid tumbling over.
So here the steering is already fucking hell, a lot different.
Something also important to mention is that after the testing session, the base itself was just slightly warm, not hot, and this is due to the complement of active cooling next to the passive cooling from the housing. It's a common issue with wheelbases of any technology that they can overheat in long sessions, so I am really glad to see this combination come in the CAMMUS wheelbase. A teacher once told me that warmth or heat is the enemy of all electronics, so I really believe this complementary addition will improve the lifespan of your wheelbase. As a conclusion, I want to say that I enjoyed my time so far with the DDWB21. It has been a great sensation for me, and although I still think the 8 to 10 Nm max torque is my personal sweet spot, I think I came to understand why certain people enjoy a more powerful high-end wheelbase like this one. When you look at what CAMMUS offers, you will find a fantastic alternative to more known brands out there, and granted, it doesn't have that many fanboys as other brands, but it should. They know what they are doing, and proof of this is the QR and the quality of both steering wheel and wheelbase, or just the button box on the wheelbase and the active cooling. They could have gone the cheap way for the production of this wheelbase, but they didn't. They made a fine piece of hardware without cutting any corners for the production of it. I think the main problem of CAMMUS is the availability at the moment. So I have been following them for some time now. They made huge improvements already on their sites and overseas warehouses, which is very good, but it's still a bit limited. So if they have warehouses in the US, in Saudi Arabia, in France, and in Spain. So if you are in one of those countries, it's very you can get the wheelbases at a much cheaper price. If you are in another country, then you need to count on the shipment from China and the import tax, and that can drive up the price already quite a lot. Then instead of a 500 euro base, you're coming more close to a 700 euro base. It's still not it's still worth it. In my opinion, it's still worth it. It is a very good base, but yet then you have the competition, the prices with the competition. Yeah, so that's a bit harder. But as soon as they clear this up, if they have if the availability grows, I think they are really on the right track. Why I am stressing the price is because the competition at this moment on the DD market is a killer. Especially Fanatec has been pulling strong offers out of their sleeves. These offers are currently limited to the lower end segment of the DD market, but still it puts the entire market under a lot of pressure. Don't get me wrong though, even with the shipment and tax, it will be impossible to find an equally powerful and well finished qualitatively wheelbase like the DDWB21 for the price they are asking, at least for the moment. As a last thing, I really want to thank CAMMUS for their trust in my channel and in my reviews. because they sent me this wheelbase to test for free, and I really appreciate that. It shows a lot of appreciation, and that's always nice to have. Also, they gave me a reduction link, so if you give in the code NeoSphinx on your order, you get a 5% reduction on your complete order. Thank you very much for watching this video. Leave a like if you had something from it, and I will see you all next video. Bye bye.